Hi everyone, welcome to another Hosted Networks webinar. My name is Luke Bragg and today I'm going to be providing you with an advanced workshop into VoIP and the solution that we provide to you. Please note that the webinar will be recorded and available via our partner portal, and if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to let me know in the questions box in the GoToWebinar window. Now, before we jump into the more advanced features of the VoIP Now/4PSA system, I wanted to do a quick roundup of our basics webinar that we held a couple of weeks ago, where we provided an introduction into VoIP as a whole, how our system works and how you're able to implement it and find opportunities to actually sell these to your existing and new customers. So at the most basic level, we have 4 different sections in the system. The first being our service provider account, which we provide to you. Logging in here will show you all of your customers' information, separate customers, separate organizations, and it'll be your first stop into managing all of your reports, seeing all of your charging plans, etc., etc. Second will be the organization, which is essentially your client that sits underneath a service provider account. Third will be the users, which will be your customers' staff, and then extensions. So those extensions will sit underneath your user accounts, and we're going to be going over specific extensions later on in the webinar with more advanced features. Now, just a quick reminder, and very, very important, both the organization and the user have charging plans assigned to them. Now, the reason that there are 2 levels of charging plans is because this solution enables you to be able to resell again to one of your partners or customers if you'd like to. So much in the same way that we provide a solution to you, you're able to provide and then resell that same solution again, which is where the 2 different charging plans come into. So let's say, for example, you had a partner business that you wanted to provide VoIP or sell your VoIP solution, which is essentially the VoIP solution that we provide to you. You're able to do that, and the system allows that by enabling charging plans at multiple levels. If you don't want to resell the solution, that's fine. The second charging plan underneath the user level just needs to be set as 1 or 0, and I'll go over that again quickly during our technical demo in a bit. So now that we've gone over that and we've recapped the basics webinar, the first advanced feature that I want to show you is an IVR. Now, an IVR is an interactive voice recording, and you would have experienced these in day-to-day life whenever you call up Hosted Network or Telstra or anyone that requires multiple levels of phone topology. Think about it when you call Hosted Network and you're presented with a recording that says, please press 1 for support, 2 for sales, and 3 for accounts. That is essentially an IVR. The reason that you will implement one of these solutions, one of these extensions, is to have an automated system direct calls for you rather than having all calls go to a receptionist and then that receptionist having to divvy out the calls. Now, an example of that is very much like the example I just gave, but I wanted to draw it out so we could visually see it. So if you think of an incoming call, you dial a direct in-dial or a public phone number that's attached to the system, the IVR is going to answer that call. So you attach a public phone number to an IVR extension. Now, once that call reaches the IVR extension, the IVR will pick up and start playing a pre-recorded message that is set up in the extension itself. It'll say option 1 for sales, option 2 for support, and option 3 for accounts. Now, if you were to hit option 1, what it's going to do is transfer you to John Smith on extension 101. If you were to press option 2, it's going to transfer you to a support queue, which not just calls 1 extension, but calls 2 or more at the same time. Support queues is something else that we're going to be going over through shortly. Option 3 is accounts, very similar to option 1. It's just going to be transferring you through to an extension. Now, that's a very basic IVR. You can get more complex and you can keep it simpler than that as well. Like anything, keeping it as simple as possible will make it easier to manage and maintain in the long run. There's no need to put in more complexity, and if you ever have any trouble implementing these or you're just doing it for the first time, I highly recommend checking out our knowledge base articles on it and also contacting us, as we're able to walk you through this for the first couple of times. Just makes it a little bit easier. So that's a visual representation of it. Now in the actual VoIP Now system, what you'll see is the screenshot that you can see on your screen now. It's an IVR with a context. A context is essentially just a group of the initial creation of the items that you have. You can see that you have a start option, timeout, invalid, and a 0 to 9, and star and hash. So essentially every possible outcome that someone can press on a phone. I'll go a bit more into this when I jump into the actual technical side of it, but essentially what start does or start means is that when a number is dialed in, this is the first thing that's going to happen. In our case, we're playing a sound in the background. You're able to press options 1, 2, or 3, and you can see that they're actually highlighted as green on the screen. If you were to press anything that's red, 0 or 4 to 9, for example, you'll get an invalid message, and you can see that there's an invalid option there now. So that can be any of the actions that you're able to apply to any of these options, and that can be reset to the start, play an invalid sound, and then hang the call up, etc., etc. So we've gone over the most common advanced feature that we have in our VoIP system, or that we're discussing with our partners. Some other advanced features. Number one is queues. So if you think of queues as hunt groups or line hunts, that's what they're most commonly called on the Telstra or Optus side. Essentially what it allows you to do is have a group of agents or extensions called in a variety of ways. So if we go back to the IVR example of calling support and John and Jane getting a call when that option is pressed, essentially what it means is rather than one extension being dialed, you can have multiple people dialed either at the same time in a cascading way, external agents brought in as well. You can also do round robin. You can call everyone at the same time. There are a multitude of options. And you can also have the external agents called as well, sorry, like I said before, where you can have mobiles and even extensions on other systems called. Next is incoming call rules. So incoming call rules can be applied to any extension and can be used in a range of different ways. One example is when my office phone rings and I don't answer it for 30 seconds and it's within business hours, it's going to call my mobile. Outside of business hours, it might just redirect to my mobile straight away. And it's very, very handy when I know I'm going to be away from the office. I don't have to come back and check my voicemails. I can take the call then and there. That's just one example of it. Now, third is custom charging plans and custom charging destinations. So I have a question from partners quite regularly on they want to be able to charge local and national calls with one profit margin and mobile numbers with a different profit margin. And this can definitely be done, and it can be done via the actual charging plan menu, which I'll go through in just a second. Fourth and final is the API. So the VoIP Now API is very, very powerful in a way that if you ever come up against an opportunity with a hotel, franchise, or any high-level company that wants to be able to integrate their VoIP or phone solution with their CRM, with their ERP software, the VoIP Now solution is definitely able to do that. We've had a couple of call centers run through partners that require this functionality, and a couple of examples of what the API can do is to actually have a call come in and immediately on the agent screen the information for the company that's calling pop up, the last time that they called, a picture of the person, their son's birthday, their last interaction. All of that information can come up and then also be reported to the billing system to ensure that that customer is billed appropriately for that time and for that usage. It doesn't always work, especially in the smaller scenarios. You wouldn't primarily use an API for a couple of seat opportunity, but it's definitely helped some of our partners win over some opportunities where their competition weren't able to do the same thing. If you ever come up against that type of opportunity, please feel free to give us a call because we can help you out with that. Now that we've gone over that, what I want to do is jump out of the presentation just quickly and jump into the VoIP Now system. So this is the web interface that I'm sure you're all mostly familiar with. If not, the address is sip01.mhn.net.au. What this will allow you to do is manage and maintain every organization that sits underneath your service provider account. Okay, so that you can see here that I've got my demo account set up. You can see that the company is Contoso and the organization contact name is John Smith. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and jump into here. And the first thing I'm going to show you is the IVR. Now, before I get into the IVR, just a couple of really quick tip. You can see here that the users have an extension name in front of them. Now, this doesn't happen by default. This is manual, but it helps in the long run when you're trying to look for extension numbers or trying to look for certain people. Normally, you'd have to jump into the actual user, see what extension they have, and jump back out. Doing this lets you quickly and easily see who they are. Second tip is the call handling user just here. So you don't get charged or have a limit on the amount of users that you create. You are charged and have a limit on the amount of extensions that you create. So what we always recommend is having a call handling user essentially group together all of the extensions that your company might need, your customer's organization might need, just to make it quicker and easier to be able to look at it in the long run. So we've labeled this extension 999 because that's the extension number. And when I jump into this, you can see that there are two extensions. One is the support queue and one is the IVR. The IVR is the main one that we're going to be showing through now. And as you can see, when I jump into it, it's a very similar screen to what you would normally see when setting up a standard extension. You have the edit extension and incoming call rules functionality here, but towards the top, you don't have the phone terminal set up, you have the IVR set up. And when you jump into that, you can see that we have the main menu contacts just here. So as I was saying before, a context is essentially one level of options from 0 to 9 *# that you're able to do. You can have multiple contexts, and you can have one context jump into the other. So if you wanted to have press 1 for sales, press 2 for support, what you could do is if you press 2 for support, it could then go into another context that then had another multitude of options, one for server support, one for desktop support, one for general support, for example. But to keep it simple for the demo, I've just included one here. And when we click in the main menu, you'll see something very similar to what you saw in the screenshot during the presentation. You've got your multiple options, and inside of each will be an action. So as an example, let's jump into the start option, and you can see that I have one action, just one here in the actual start option. And if I click on that, you can see the options that are available in there. So what I'm going to do is play a sound. Now you do have multiple options here for the actions, so be sure to check them out. In this instance, we're just going to play a sound. We're going to play it in the background, and I've selected one of the default sounds called main menu. Now, there are multiple sounds that you do get for free and are all inclusive with your service provider account. So if you ever come up against a customer that a little bit shy, doesn't want to record their voice or doesn't have a message, doesn't want to pay for one to be created, you can use the default ones in here. A quick tip when creating a start option and start action in the context is to play your sound in the background. The reason we do that is because you have two options. You have background and foreground. If you play your sound in the background, your caller is at any time able to press an option 1, 2, or 3. If you play it in the foreground, you're essentially forcing them to wait until the end of the sound, and if it's quite a long sound, your caller's basically going to either hang up or have to wait for the sound to finish before pressing an option. Just a little quick tip there. So if I jump back up, you can see that we have a timeout option. I haven't got anything enabled there, but let's just say you wanted the phone to ring for 15 or 30 seconds after the initial sound is played. You want something to happen rather than just nothing. You can set that here, and you can also set an invalid option. So what I've done here is, if you jump into here, you can just see that it says invalid, and it's going to ask them to press one of the options presented before. So I'm just going to press cancel and jump back up one more time. Now here you can see option 1, 2, and 3. I won't go into all of them, but just as an example, you can see that we're playing a sound. Sorry I click on transfer call to extension number, you can see that we're transferring the call to an extension. The extension is 101. That's going to play a sound as we do that, just to let the caller know that we're actually doing something. So in a nutshell, that's what an IVR extension looks like, and that's what a context looks like. So now that we've gone over that, the next thing that I want to go over are queues. So in the same call handling group, you can see that we have a support queue here. And when I jump into that, it looks very, very similar to the IVR and phone terminal setup. Same thing, edit extension and incoming call rules. But towards the top, you can see that we have a couple of different options. So if we go into queue setup, you can see that when a call comes in, it's going to ring for a maximum of 20 seconds for an agent. You have all different types of options here, too many to go through in one sitting. Feel free to jump in and play with your queues. Any questions or issues, let us know. We can always go through it with you. Jump back up and go through the queue agent section. So if you think of queue agents as separate to extensions, what you have to do whenever you're creating a queue is ensure you're always adding a local extension. Now I can't add any more local extensions here because I've logged all three that are available in the organization. But what I can do is I can add a remote agent. So a remote agent is essentially anything outside of the system itself. If I wanted to add a mobile number or an external landline number, I could do that in here. Okay. And finally, we have incoming call rules. So let's jump back up one more section and take a look at John Smith. If we jump into his extension and go into the incoming call rules section, right now you can see that that's blank. To set up something similar to what I was describing before about transferring to a mobile, if John didn't answer the phone within 30 seconds, you'd come up to the first section, click transfer to, type in an external phone number here, and once you've done that, type in how long you'd like that extension to ring for or that number to ring for. When the caller ID is any, during any time, and the extension doesn't matter, the call status doesn't matter. So what that's going to do is allow that transfer to be able to go through, and when I click on OK, it's going to add that in. Now, you don't have a limit of how many incoming call rules you can place, and you can order them. So if I was to add another incoming call rule in here, one for say after hours, I'm able to do that, and it will come through as a second option down below. You can then reorder them, and you can also say whether or not it's final. For example, if that first transfer to is successful, and I do pick, and John does pick up the phone, sorry, then it's not going to go to the next incoming call rule because it doesn't need to. So, last but not least, sorry, almost forgot, jumping into the custom charging plans. So, as I said before, there are two levels of charging plans, one at the organization, one at the user level. If you'd like to set up a custom charging destination, jump into your charging plans on the left-hand menu under System, and then on the right-hand side of the charging plan, under the column of D, you'll see a couple of gold coins and what looks like a green triangle. If you click on that for that charging plan, you'll be able to come in and very easily, very quickly create custom destinations with custom margins. So an example of this would be to come into here and say all calls to or starting with 04, so mobiles, and we can put a description of mobiles in here just to keep it nice and clean. What we're going to do is say it's going to cost 1.5 times the cost that that you would receive as a service provider. So going back to the basics webinar, the charging plan formula is always a multiplication of the cost that you receive. So if we were to charge you $1 a minute and you wanted to charge your customer 50% margin, your multiplication here would be 1.5 times, which would put 50% on top of the cost that we provide to you. Now, whether or not you want to provide a minimum cost or a flag for here is up to you, but generally speaking, we go 0 at every 60 seconds. There's also the ability to provide free minutes every month from a package, which you can also set up. We press on OK, and that's now included in our charging plan. Now, just like with the incoming call rules, you can do multiple here. There's no problem with that. You can set up specific costs for international if you know one of your customers has a, let's say, for example, an office in the UK or Germany or America, and you wanted to provide them free calls. You could come in here with that and either provide a free minute package to those numbers, or come in here and say that they don't cost anything at all. So that wraps up our advanced feature workshop. I know that there have been a couple of questions that have come through and have been answered on the questions box on the side. If you have any other questions, please feel free to contact us at sales@hostednetwork.com.au. Give us a call at 1300 781 148 or visit our website at hostednetwork.com.au. Thanks very much for attending our webinar, and we'll see you same time next week.